This is Rob from the Brand Safety Series, and we are really lucky today to have Durreen Shahnaz, who is the CEO of Impact Investment Exchange, IIX. And she's also an author of her new book called The Defiant Optimist. We were lucky enough to meet Durreen in Singapore at our Brand Safety Summit, and it's just really been a great experience meeting her, and we're so lucky to have her today. Hey, Durreen, how are you?
Good, Rob. Thank you for having me. It's great to be back in the States.
You define this term, and the name of the book is Defiant Optimist. Can you explain what it means to be a defiant optimist and how that blends into your motivation, please?
Absolutely. So, the way I look at it, defiant optimism, if you look at the words, the two words, they're almost like contradicting each other, right? You're being defiant, and that means that you are really coming from a setup where just there's injustice and wrong, so there's some anger in it. But then there is optimism, which is full of hope. So it really is that contrarian view of the two. If you combine it together, and it becomes something really beautiful, where this really a belief in the personal vision that you actually have a position, in the global consequence, and you really are a part of the solution, and you can ensure that the system that you're in, that it comes, it becomes inclusive and brings others in. So you're really part of a solution, not only just by tweeting about it, not just by being on social media, but really actually taking some actions around it and being able to do it. So guiding your North Star, but doing it in realism, doing it in action, doing it with actual outcomes that impacts others.
I can imagine, and I can understand the idea that, I'm not going to give up, but at the same time, there's a bigger mission here, and it's not really about me. It's about the mission. And so that I can't give up. And going above it. That's inspiring. How do you work that into? So there's a couple of initiatives that you've launched specifically that are really exciting. They're named the Women's Livelihood Bond Series and the Orange Bond Initiative. These are two specific things you're working on. How does this defiant optimism principle work into the creation of these? And tell us a little bit about the initiatives as well.
Yes, happily, Rob. So it's very interesting. We talked about the philosophy. We talked about the big picture. We talked about sort of that soul search that happens in the process. Now let's put it in action. So for me, again, kind of being in the financial system, and then also, frankly, again, what we have in common, Rob, you also are from the financial system and media, and so am I. So what I did was I translated that, and I said, okay, so how does this now work in practice? How do I actually change things? So it really became about educating an ecosystem about a more inclusive financial system, how they will benefit from it, but then also using the small medium businesses, which are again owned mostly by women and gender minorities and minorities in general, and saying how do we sort of use them as the vehicle to change the system, kind of empower them, because they're the ones who are always marginalized. So given that, we create this fintech platform where they can actually raise capital and created structures around it, measuring the impact, the positive impact that they're creating, and also educating them, and then the potential investors, lawyers, accountants who'll be working with them. And after the first bond, which was just a pilot for $8.5 million, it just grew and grew and grew. And then last year, so we issued a bond every single year. Every single year it was oversubscribed. So now we just issued the fifth one last December for $50 million, and now we're putting out a bond for $100 million. So close to $300 million in the market just through this bond.
You've created this great vehicle. Now you can successfully raise money. What's the use of proceeds?
The proceeds, the money immediately, we raise it, and given that it's a bond, so again, for the audience there, if you kind of have some finance background, you'll appreciate it. So with bonds, they're not funds. So we actually have to disperse it immediately within 24 hours. So each bond pulls together multiple countries, multiple sector, multiple small, medium businesses. So although it's US dollar denominated, we basically make the disbursement in local currency. So you can imagine we get the money, we have to hedge it with the local currency. So when we're making that loan in India, several loans in India, we actually have to hedge it to Indian rupee, or in Indonesia to Indonesian rupiah, in the Philippines to peso. So we have an entire capital market system set up to hedge it. And once the hedging is done, again, we're talking about here now, kind of all happening in minutes, and then we disperse the money, to the small medium businesses, who then turn around and immediately disperse it to the women in small loans, or themselves using it to create livelihood. For example, if they are putting up solar panels in buildings, they actually have to be able to use the proceeds to not only put up the solar panels, but use women as workers. They have to train the workers and use women as the technicians, and then also be putting those solar panels up, in schools that have mostly majority women students, girls students, and also be working on issues that, again, with women and gender minorities, that influences them and creates livelihood for them.
Post the event, you've had some opportunities come out of it. So please share a little bit about how we've been able
Yes.
to help. We want to continue to help. But tell
No,
us about how you've had
absolutely.
some successes so far.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up, because the Brand Safety Summit for me, when I got it, invited to speak by David, my dear friend from my media days, um, I was very excited, because it was the first time I could actually sort of talk in a public forum about the intersectionality of media and finance, right? Two big forces and powers. And frankly, that was sort of the theme of my speech, and it was very interesting, because after that, Rob, we had I had several big tech companies approach us and basically say, how can we be part of it? Because that was also, we just launched a few months ago this whole movement called the Orange Movement. Orange being the color of the Sustainable Development Goal 5, which is for women and gender equality, for gender minorities. So basically saying we're going to have women and gender minorities in everything, in forefront of the financial markets. So these tech companies came to us and said, "Oh my God, what you're doing is basically, DEI, and you're doing this so effectively, and you're actually being able to give it a value and bring it into the financial markets. How can we play a role?" So what we are now doing with a couple of these tech companies is, and you'll see this in the next couple of months, I'm very excited, is we are rolling out the Orange Seal, meaning the businesses who are deep in DEI, they will, because we'll measure that impact, and we will actually verify it, and they get the Orange Seal. So when the consumer is buying something from them, they know that this is an equitable company.
Thank you for sharing time with us. Thank you for joining us for this interview. And we'll be sharing this with our audience. Take a look at this book. There's a lot to learn, and a lot to learn from Durreen. We'll be hearing more from her in the future. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob. And thank you, David. Thank you for everything. Take care.